The sun is in the sky, spring is in the air, and after a long winter's nap, that's probably all it takes to ignite your desire to get outside. But especially at this time of the year, you have to take extra precautions to make sure that you don't ignite something else.
Pennsylvania has two fire seasons. The main one is in the springtime. Temperatures are warming each day or week to week. So as the earth is warming up, the surface is warming up.
As the surface warms, it begins to dry out the leaf litter and debris that has been laying on lawns and forest floors for many months. And if you go even a short period of time without rain, it can dry out in a hurry.
The fuels are the natural vegetation, live or dead, that can burn. Days of dry weather kind of come on top of each other. It accumulates, the fuels keep drying. So one day of dry weather, they dry out a little bit. If it doesn't rain again the second day, they keep drying out more and more. Weather is a big part of wildfires in Pennsylvania. Weather drives things like how fast the fire spreads, how hot it burns, what direction it might go.
Because of this, the Bureau of Forestry has a close working relationship with the National Weather Service. Both entities look at the weather intently in order to assess the ingredients for fire weather every single day. And it starts with the fuel moisture.
And that's handled exclusively by our partners in the Bureau of Forestry, Allegheny National Forest, and the Game Commission. And so they're looking at how dry is the stuff that could burn. That is something that we collaborate with them on, but we don't do directly ourselves. Our focus when it comes to fire weather is relative humidity, or basically how dry the atmosphere is, as well as wind speed.
This represents one critical way that Pennsylvania partners work together to forecast fire. While the main ingredients for fire weather have long been known, the ability to forecast the convergence of all of them more than a day or two in advance remains a challenge. But there are some specific weather patterns that portend problems.
So maybe it's a cold front's just gone through, you got high pressure building in, you got strong northwesterly winds. Or maybe there's a warm front that's approaching and you're getting strong southeasterly or southwesterly winds. So generally we're looking for some high pressure moving in or moving out, because that is what generally brings sinking air and dry air being able to mix down to the surface. And then you also want some wind source.
Sniffing out fire weather days has become easier as model guidance gets better, but it is still far from perfect.
But there's still things models always don't do well, and one of those is relative humidity. And we found in the last couple of years that some days, during certain weather conditions, that the humidity can drop very quickly, especially during the afternoon and evening.
The relative humidity can bottom out, maybe 20% even, which is big time concern for our fire weather partners, because in situations when they go out and they're doing a prescribed burn, or they have a day like that, it's really good for their prescribed burning activities. And all of a sudden the relative humidity drops well below what we're forecasting and they're expecting. It can go from this is ideal time for prescribed burn to, oh man, this fire is going to get out of control, and now the people that are on the ground are in harm's way.
In the spring, very dry air typically sits just above the Earth's surface. And before all the vegetation blooms, high temperatures on a sunny day can overshoot expectations. That extra warmth down near the ground is able to rise, and it can mix those low dew points down to the ground.
Dew points are the main issue, but as you said, there's also the temperatures end up being 3, 4, 5 degrees higher than expected, and so that combination of higher temperatures and lower dew points leads to a much lower relative humidity.
These situations, known as dew point bombs, have gotten an increased amount of attention from meteorologists.
Some of our forecasters that identified days that are sunny, beautiful. It's a nice day to get outside and do about anything, maybe except for burn things, right? I'd say at this stage, we're pretty good at identifying when they're going to happen. And now our focus is on how low do we drop our dew points, right? How low should the relative humidities be?
Not all dew point bombs are created equal. Some days, conditions favor a modest 5% drop in the expected relative humidity, while other days it can plunge as much as 15 to 20% lower. Regardless of the situation, meteorologists have found ways to use the latest and greatest forecasting tools to their advantage to get the relative humidity forecast right.
From a sort of model world standpoint, the national blended models tends to be what we use as our starting point, and it gives us sort of the middle of the pack. Well, we can strategically leverage some of the percentile data. So maybe on a day with dew point bombs, we use our 90th percentile temperature to overshoot what the consensus says for temperature. And we use our 10th percentile dew point, so sort of the reasonable worst case scenario. And that tends to at least get us more in the ballpark. And so strategically being able to look for these targets of opportunity has been helpful for us because we feel like, man, we're making a difference. And I'll say our partners have also really appreciated it because it wasn't too long ago that they came to us and said, we take your minimum relative humidity forecast and divide it by 2 for our staffing purposes. It's bad news bears, right? We meteorologists, like anybody, have pride, and we're like, that's not good enough.
Regardless of how many fire weather days there are in the spring, inevitably there will come a point when the risk starts to drop off dramatically.
And the biggest two words is green up, is that the reason in the springtime is because there's no leaves on the trees, so the sun is warming the ground where all those leaves and things are. Once the leaves come out on the trees, most of that energy is going into growing the trees and being absorbed by the leaves. So that cuts down on the dryness at the surface. Also, the second thing is that as we get into summertime, the jet stream lifts northward, and so our big incidence of winds, prolonged wind speeds will decrease as well.
But until we get to that point,
just keeping away from starting as many fires or creating issues as you can. So say if you're out camping, campfires, a lot of times will have burn bans put in place by local municipalities. So following those, not starting fires within so many feet of woods if you live out in the country and woods near your house. So if you're out, say, grilling, if you've got a charcoal grill, keeping the cover on, not letting embers fly out. So you probably driving around, you'd see the Smokey Bear signs that talk about low, medium, high fire danger. So paying attention to those and being abreast when you're out and about, say if you're going out into a state park for a day.
So be aware, be smart, and as the saying goes, hold on to your butts. For Weather World, I'm Ben Reppert.